our special guest as we go through tonight. So I am very excited to introduce you to, maybe reintroduce you to author Marianne Power tonight, whose new book, Love Me. Mine looks a little bit different than hers. This is a press copy.
I'll show you this.
Yeah, that's what the official one looks like, the book baby. This book follows Marianne's journey, quest, search for a different happy ever after. So welcome, Marianne. Huge congratulations on your book baby.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And hello everyone in Shelf Help. Tony, when you did my first ever interview for Help Me, which was my last book, and that came out in 2018. So it feels nice to be back again with the second one.
Yeah, it's like a lovely full moment, full circle moment.
Full circle, yeah.
And I was looking actually about when Help Me was our book of the moment, and it was 2018, so that's like nearly 6 years ago. But I think we know each other probably from 7 years ago. We both Daily Mail Survivors Club, I think. So probably bonded over that. But yeah. I think Help Me was such a great book to do early on in Shelf Help as well, obviously, because it was looking at all the different big self-helpies.
Exactly. No, we were really, really aligned in what we were doing at that time, weren't we? Because you were just starting Shelf Help and I was, doing the Help Me project.
Yeah, and then we did the first event together, and then you went on to do TED Talks, like massive festival, TV appearances, amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed since in 6 years then for you.
Well, I don't know, sort of, and then also not, because it's just, me in the same flat, eating the same pasta. And I don't know, in some ways you have all these like big, amazing experiences, and they're amazing to have had those experiences, and then you go home and keep living your life the way you always do.
Yeah. So where are you today then? Anyone who's joining, who's read the book or read the books will know probably where the flat is, but let us know.
Yeah, so I live in Hackney in East London, opposite a chip shop. So the chip shop gets photographed quite a lot, which it's just literally out of my window. I look at this chip shop and I share it on Instagram, and the chip shop also features in this book, me looking at the chip shop and imagining what's going on with the people in there.
And is this where you do all your writing? Is this the desk where it will happen?
Yeah, I have two. I have this one by the window, which is like sort of the table I also eat on, and then I've got an official desk with a proper sort of bigger desktop. So I flip between the two.
And so how are you today? And now that this book is out in the world, so if it's 6 years between books, I mean, is it?
Oh, bloody hell, I know. This does not pay London rents. My level of productivity is not sustainable. So now, well, I was just saying to you before the call, I've got long COVID. So right now I'm in a real rest period, and the book was officially published on the 22nd of August in the UK and Ireland. And I had started a newspaper job the month before that. And so it's been a full couple of months, and my body is now saying no. So life is really quiet, but I'm actually happy for it. Sometimes I think I need my body to shut down in order to stop.
Your body's telling you to slow down
and watch television.
So and accepting that, though, I think is hard. Like we did talk a little bit about this off air, but it's like because we do know each other from a previous life as journalists for probably one of the most infamous newspapers on the planet.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think you've probably trained yourself to do the opposite for a long time.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I have a cycle of doing this, of overworking and then collapsing. And then I get well, and then I go and do the same thing again. So I was literally writing in my journal this morning, will I, stop doing this? I'll have to find out if I do. I hope I do, and just take a more gentle path. I seem to be quite all or nothing.
I think, so I suppose it's a lot of people will relate to that on this call, because I know there's a lot of people who've either experienced burnout or have a tendency to, like you say, go all out, especially when something big's happening, like you've got the book out, like you said, new job, loads going on.
Yeah. With this book, I've had to cancel most of the publicity around it and cancel the events, and so it's lovely to be able to do this because I can do it from home. But it's also then like just trusting that the book will find its readers. That maybe sometimes we don't have to do all the singing and like maybe we don't need to give the extra push. Maybe I've given it enough, and hopefully it'll just find its people. Yeah, that's what I think at the moment. I'm sort of trusting the world works in mysterious ways.
100%. So I love to ask people then, what does a day in your life look like? But it sounds like a day in your life currently is not what it's always like, and not what it will always be like. But so let's talk about the writing process then,
yeah,
because quite often quite often I interview people. We have people on here who are I don't know, coaches, or they're therapists, and they write a book as well. But you are a writer, so I just I can't wait to speak to you about this, because I think it's so interesting to people. Like, what does your day in your life look like when you're writing a book or an article, or kind of getting into something like that?
The same in the book Love Me, I seem to write really slowly, and I become a bit obsessed with a topic. So how it will start, and I've already got the start for the third one, is that right at the very beginning, I'm just like seeing things everywhere that I think are interesting, and then connecting things. And so I'll quite often have a document with like lots of links to different articles that I've seen, or I'll be writing notes on my iPhone about conversations I've heard, and then once I'm starting to get more into the writing, in a dream world, I get up and I'm at it by 8ish, and I go through till about midday. So those 4 hours in the morning for me are my best hours. And when I'm smart, I stop then, and I do some sort of like admin-y or less mentally intensive work in the afternoon. When I get into trouble is when I say, no, you need to keep going all day, because everyone's different, but writing to me is it's quite mentally draining. And yeah, I'm realizing that less is more for me anyway. And then in the afternoon can be bits of journalism or bits of admin, or if I'm brave enough, just rest, and just take a break. But it's funny, that's the thing with being self-employed, is I'm a really bad boss of myself. It's the most productive thing for me to go and take the afternoon off and have a walk, and then maybe do another hour in the evening if I get a big burst. That's the best thing I can do. And sometimes I don't, and I've sort of chained myself to the desk out of this old-fashioned idea that that's what hard work is, and I should be working hard all the time. So I really want to unlearn this approach to life and work, because I think it's even the most productive way to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Unlearning that kind of deadline driven. I mean, obviously
more.
If you're writing a book, but like you say, when your time is yours, it's why feel guilty when you're not sitting at your desk, not actually doing much that's good or productive.
But and I don't know for other writers whether it's like this, but when I'm writing a book, it is sort of all I'm thinking about. So that even when I'm having conversations with friends or something, there's still this sort of thing going on in the background. And so like sitting at the computer is just one part of writing a book. Lots of the other stuff is happening when I'm doing other things, because it's all kind of coalescing and connections are being made. So yeah, I would love at some point to trust that and do my 4 hours in the morning, and then just go off and do my mental whatever jigsaw putting together while I'm having a walk or having a coffee or something.
Yeah, such a good point. You need to process it all, right? And get inspiration, and things are always coming. And you obviously you write a lot. You're writing about the people you know and your life experiences. So you have you have to have those experiences to write about them.
Yeah, exactly.
And was it different with Help Me versus Love Me? Were you a different writer, would you say?
No, I suppose the first with Help Me, it's my first book, and so there was a different thing going on, which was that I didn't know how to write a book. I'd never written a book before, and I thought it would be like a long article, and we've written lots of articles before, but it isn't that at all. It's a completely different thing. So that was the panic for Help Me, is like I had to read a lot of books about how to write books because I didn't know. And with Love Me, I did in theory know how to write a book, but then I also knew a lot of the other stuff that came with it. So then there was a lot of other self-consciousness of, what would the Guardian take the piss out of here, and what would, I don't know, some other writer think of this. There was a lot of, they call it, I think in with music, that sort of second album syndrome, when you get very self-conscious and overthink everything, and that definitely played a part in Love Me. But I think I don't know, I'm still newish to this, but I think people who write books say that almost every book creates its own challenge, and then for some reason we keep doing it. So at various points in Help Me, I thought I would never do this again. And then Love Me, I was like, well, I'm never doing this again, ever. And then idea number 3 is just now tinkling in my head. And at some point, when I was still in the middle of writing Love Me and finding it really difficult, it was lockdown, I was living alone, and I told my sister that I had the idea for number 3, and she's like, no, you can't, because I make everyone's life really difficult because I've become so obsessed. And anyway.
It's happening. I know, I can tell it's happening. There's going to be like a family intervention.
I think finally they've sort of accepted this. I seem to be one of these people that just has to make life very difficult, because I've run my idea, the 3rd book, number 3, by my sister and my mum, and they've actually given me the thumbs up. But for Love Me, they didn't want me to do another one, because and also with Help Me, the publicity around it was huge and it was really exciting, but it was also quite overwhelming. So I think the whole experience from a family member, they look at you and they just want you to have a nice life and not keep picking things that are hard. But then the rewards are really great too.
Yeah, amazing. And what has your mum's feedback been on this one? Because if anyone's read Help Me and this one, some people might have read this one already or started to. Mum is a big character in both of them.
Yeah. So mum is an Irish mother, grew up on a farm in Kerry. And so when I started the self-help project, she thought it was ridiculous that she was not brought up to analyze her toenails, as she put it. So I think often she looks at me like I'm an alien. It's like, who are you and how are you anything to do with me? And with Love Me, there's a lot of sex in it. So one of the parts of the book is me going off on tantra retreats, trying to get good at sex because I thought I was bad at it. And I was genuinely petrified of mum reading it. I felt sick. I used to wake up a lot in the middle of the night. And I also actually deeply thought I was doing something wrong by writing about sex, because I come from an Irish Catholic background, and that is quite a heavy duty generational shame there. It's not something we've ever talked about. I went to an Irish Catholic school where, yeah, sex was wrong and bad unless you were married. And even then, really, there wasn't ever discussed in terms of pleasure. It was talked about, in terms of having babies. And so rationally, I knew that wasn't like what my mum would think or my aunties would think, but I worried I would really embarrass them by writing so openly about something like sex. And I didn't want her to read the book. And she kept asking, can I read this book? And I kept going, I don't know. But then it got to the point where sort of everyone on the street had read early versions of the book, because I'm very close with all my neighbours. And my mum lives on the same street. So then mum was the only one on the street who hadn't read the book. And then that felt very mean. So then my sister snuck her a copy without me knowing. And I was sitting outside a coffee shop one day and she walked past and sat down. She said, I've read your book. And I was like, oh God. And she was utterly amazing about it. She said she was gobsmacked to hear about what I'd been up to, all these tantra retreats. And she had no idea, and that she doesn't know anyone as brave as me, not just to do what I did, but then to write about it. And that she thought it's a very important book about becoming a woman and about pleasure. And no one ever talked to her about these things. And so she gave me all, it was amazing. And then she went, anyway, I've got to go. And then walked off, and I was just left. I think I probably had a cry, but it was really a really important moment for me, because I love my mum. I'm really close to her. And when I was writing this book, there was a bit of me that thought I was doing something wrong. And I wasn't talking to her about what I was writing about, because that's how sex is. We don't talk to our parents mostly. Maybe some generations are different now. And so to have her blessing like that was just actually the best thing.
Yeah, totally amazing. I've actually just finished the early chapter on Tantra, because I was reading it at the moment. I love it. It's so brilliant, Marianne. I feel like I know you very well.
Oh, you know me too well.
Get that. But there's early on in the book, there is a part where you say you ask your mum do you love yourself? She says no, immediately says no. And then you say, do you like yourself? And she said, I don't think so. Or I just wasn't brought up to do that. Like, she's very firm about that. And I thought, and as to what you were just saying about her being able to share this, you share this with her, it's like, must be really powerful.
We haven't talked at length about it, but she's really taken it in, I think, because yeah, they weren't brought up to talk about themselves or like themselves. It was all, I guess, be quiet and be good. And so one of the books that I read as part of this process in Love Me, I read a book called Pussy, a Reclamation. And it's about, yeah, learning to love yourself as a woman, learning to love your body, but also your sexuality and your just whole self. And it talks about, it asks you questions like, how do you feel about being a woman? And I realized that I felt really uncomfortable being a woman. I didn't know I felt like that, but I didn't, you know, she asked, do you like being a woman? And I remember writing in my journal, well, that's ridiculous. Of course I don't. There's nothing to like. And I think I'd really inherited that from mum, who had probably inherited it from her mum, who had inherited, you know, it was just, yeah, it's these things are quite ingrained. So that was part of the early chapters of me, yeah, exploring, learning to love myself and learn to love myself as a woman. And one of the great exercises that Pussy Reclamation includes is bragging. So part of that is also sisterhood. So she thinks that women in a patriarchal world are very often competitive with each other, suspicious of each other, a little bit guarded, or we can flip the other way and bond over our woes. So it's almost like we each compete to show what a mess we are, or, you know, what a disaster we are, because it's almost our way of saying, look, I'm not a threat to you. I'm a mess. So we bond over making jokes about ourselves. And I went to one friend's birthday lunch when I was reading this book, and you could just see it play out around the whole table, one by one. Each of the women would sit down and take the piss out of themselves for something. And I could see, God, that's so damaging. And so one of her exercises was bragging, where you each take it in turn to say something you're proud of, something you brag about from that day or that week or that month. And that's really uncomfortable at first because we are not used to doing it. And then once you've done the brag, then you do something you're grateful for, which we're probably more easy with. And, you know, most of us would say, oh, I'm grateful for my friends or my health. And then something that you desire. And that's also where it gets quite scary and also quite like exposing in a way, because actually saying what we really want, I don't think we even allow ourselves to think about it a lot. But she talks about how if you can like do this bragging holy trinity with your friends, you start to notice like the change in energy in your conversations. And I really did notice that, and I loved it. So I should do that with mum. Actually, I haven't done that with mum. But you know, there are ways of turning these really ingrained habits of conversation that we almost don't even know that we're doing, to just flip it on its head and then realize, God, we are so powerful, and we are, you know, what you desire and what I desire will be quite different. But I realize whenever I hear what someone desires, I can always see it for them. You know, like someone says something and I'm like, oh my God, yes. Because I think what we desire is it's something that it's calling us, you know, it's and you know, it's different for each of us. And so, you know, my desire to write a book, for the hardness I make of it, that was always there. But for someone else it would be, you know, I don't know, I want to go to Hawaii, or I want to, you know, just like we each have quite different dreams, and so putting them on the table is quite exposing. But in each case I could look around at my friends and just go, yes, totally, there is no reason why you couldn't do that. And then they start to become a bit more real.
I love that exercise so much. And it's so nice to be able to celebrate our friends, isn't it?
Yes.
Like you say, when you're saying it about yourself, it's just something we're not very used to doing.
Yeah, but we can practice.
And that's it, isn't it? I suppose when you're doing this work, it's the awareness, and so then it's almost like it's like an out-of-body experience. You're looking down, and like you say, it's the habits, and you just can see it playing out, and then you can't unsee it, can you? Then you can't unknow.
Exactly. exactly. And I think if we put ourselves down enough, we start to believe it after a
Yeah.
while. And we think it's harmless and we think, oh, I'm just joking. But we're not. We're
No.
actually kind of shooting ourselves in the foot almost every time we're having a conversation.
Yeah, words are so powerful, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What, and how would you describe your relationship with yourself post Love Me?
Oh, I got asked that by a journalist of, at the end of all this. So Love Me, just a potted explanation of it is it starts with me as a single woman at 40, and it starts with yet another romantic disaster, and me just going, why doesn't this work for me? This whole thing of, meeting someone, moving in a flat together, getting married, having children, which is the stuff that most of my friends had done. Why didn't that work for me? Is it because there's something wrong with me that I need to fix? Or is it because there's lots of ways to live and love, and maybe that isn't the path that's meant for me? And so that's what the book is trying to go and explore. And if there are different ways to live and love, what are they? Because as a 40 something woman, I hadn't really seen them. Almost everyone I knew who was single, and there weren't many, were trying not to be single. There was this idea that being single just had to be bad. And but I was like, but does it have to be? And so the part that's how it starts off, and then the self-love is part of that beginning thing of learning to, or not just accepting myself how I am as someone who hasn't had many relationships, and then learning to love my body as a woman. That's a big part of the Pussy book. Is this, again, we're so critical of our bodies and we're so disgusted by them often. And she talks about in history, the female body was revered not as a sort of sex object, but as just so powerful. Women were so powerful in ancient history, not in our modern history. And my mind was blown to know that. I actually didn't know that was the case. Anyway, so I did lots of things in the course of this book exploring love. And at the end, that was one of the journalists asked me, so do you love yourself? At the end of it, and I still find it really hard to, which is sad, isn't it? But I think, I think I accept myself and I know myself very well. And I don't know that I know how to love myself very well yet. I guess that can be a whole lifetime of practice. It's not something I tend to be very hard on myself, and tend to be a worrier and an overdoer and an overgiver, and all those things aren't very loving to me sometimes. So that's sort of given away part of the ending. So the learning to love yourself, I think, is like a really big task. And sometimes we bandy it around like it's this easy thing. You've just got to love yourself. And I don't know that it's that easy for most of us.
And do you think that is the goal then for most of us? Because it's interesting how what started for you as a kind of exploration of singledom, and is this actually an all right way to live, as in like can I be happy and single, has also has included this massive part of the self-love.
I think, do you know, it's funny, the older I'm getting, the less interested I am in goals. I think I don't know. It's not a goal to love myself. I suppose I'm just getting better at noticing when I'm not. And I go, oh, that's not so nice. And sometimes I keep on being not nice. And then sometimes I do something a bit different. I think, because I think I've done so much self-help, and I'm probably a bit tired of wanting to be something other than I am. So I don't set up goals to do this thing or that thing. It's like, I guess there's like a gentle intention, or hope maybe, but also, I'm trying to just be how I am in any moment and just noticing things a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think that's what came through and helped me as well, wasn't it? That it's not about fixing oneself. It should not be the goal. It's actually just about being aware of how you're living and and making changes if you want to, if you need to.
Exactly. And then forgiving yourself when you don't make the changes that you would like to make.
Would you say this is a book for single people only then? I don't
So the
think so, but
no, so the early chapters, there is a lot about single positivity, which again was sort of new to me, that there was this whole movement um, around the joys of being single. And I discover a woman called Bella De Paolo. I'm not sure if you should definitely have her on for a conversation. She's amazing, and she coined the term single at heart, and she believes that for some people, being single is their most natural, truest way of being. And she sort of has a checklist. So single at heart will very often be quite consumed by creative pursuits. They will need a lot of time on their own, and they will feel relieved when a relationship ends. Even if that relationship wasn't bad, as soon as it's over, they will feel like they can breathe again. And when I read and heard her talk, I was just blown away, because it was describing me completely. And we live in a world that is very much geared towards the couple. It's, you know, tax breaks and discount holidays, and the weddings, you know, the fetishization of the big wedding day is like the ultimate goal for women, and also for reaching adulthood. And so there's so much messaging that it didn't occur to me that actually it was okay to not want to be in a couple. I didn't even allow it as a possibility. I just assumed there had to be something wrong with me, and that all people must want to be in a couple. And so when I read Bella De Paolo, I honestly, I could have like kissed her 100 times, because I really recognized myself in what she was describing. And so part of the book is, I think it does speak well to single people. And I've been surprised by how many men have read it, and also mothers and grandmothers. So there's a neighbor of mine who has 3 children. She got married when she was 25, had kids at 27. We're similar ages now. And she was one of the first sort of mother and wife person to come up to me and say, I love this book. And she's giving it to her daughter. And I was like, I'm really amazed and surprised, because we live quite different lives. And so I think initially I thought it would just speak to single women. And she was really good, and that she took me up on that. And she's like, no, we don't. We're women, and we're humans having relationships. And she said to be careful of categorizing people. You know, you're single, you're divorced, you're married, you're a mother, you're not a mother. We're putting each other in these boxes. And she's like, I'm a human who has relationships. Including one to myself. And a lot of the book is probably me finding out things about my relationship to myself as a woman, and sexuality, and the culture at large, and how I feel as a woman, and all those things impact people. And then ditto the men. I think the pussy chapters probably don't speak so well to people who aren't women, but they said they were interesting. But beyond that, it is just about humans relating to other humans. And sometimes that's sex, sometimes it's community, sometimes it's having difficult conversations. So you kind of see me learning all these different ways of how to live and love. And so I've been very pleased by how broad the readership has been.
Yeah, that's it. That's totally right. It's about relationships, and it's all those different facets of relationships, and that's what we all spend our time
yeah
trying to create, isn't it? Great relationships of all different types.
Yeah, and you can be single and living alone, I don't know, in an island off Scotland, but you've still been born of relationships. You have some form of family that you may or may not have close connections with. We all have our memories of our school friends. Yeah, we're so impacted and shaped by our relationships. Yeah,
totally. So what was the favorite part of the book for you to research and write about?
So I go off and do lots of tantra retreats, and they're so petrifying that I spend most of the first one, no joke, on the toilet. I just everything I've ever eaten in my life went through me that week. I was just so scared. And in retrospect, there were some funny moments in those. So I enjoyed writing about that, but then also with the added fear of Auntie Anne reading it and thinking, oh my God, what are you doing? And there's also a chapter where I go to a festival that's full of very alternative people, and it's because I talk midway through the book, you know, if I don't follow the more traditional path of marriage and kids, or even just a partnership, what does an alternative life look like? And I go to a festival with a friend and see what looks to me like a very alternative way of living. And you sort of see me being very judgmental of everyone and their big smiles and their long hugs. And I want to tell everyone to fuck off. But that was quite a funny chapter to write, because I could just see really obviously that I was just so scared because I was out of my depth with all these rainbow colours and piercings, and you know, I felt so straight and boring with my like wheelie Samsonite suitcase. So I enjoyed that, and I also love writing the dialogue. So there's lots of conversations with my friends in this book. I'm a single woman who was always very undrawn to being in a couple, but I realized that's me, and my friends have very different lived experiences. So there are different friend characters that embody different kinds of paths when it comes to relationships. So there's one friend who is single and desperately wants not to be, and really wants to have children, like really, and so she spends a lot of money and time trying to do the solo egg freezing and IVF on her own, and that is very hard. And then I've also got another friend who is never single but bounces from one relationship to another, and then there are two married friends who are experiencing different things to do with that kind of more adult life, actually. And so yeah, the friend characters in it embody different challenges I could see within my friendship groups, and so I loved writing the dialogue between all of us. And some of that was from memory, and I would literally stop and say, can I write that down? Or in some cases say, can I record that? Because sometimes if a topic to do with the book was coming up, then I'd be like, oh, this is brilliant, and they were good, and my friends would let me record it. So I loved that, because I loved being able to, you know, hear exactly what she said, and you know, it's nice.
Yeah, brilliant. Was it is it Sarah in the book when you say where she says, well, take a lover then, fine, don't be in a couple, take a lover, and you say, I can't, I'm way too repressed. She just says, well, unrepress yourself, like,
yeah,
easy,
just very straightforward.
Maybe I will.
Yeah, well, she's not Irish Catholic, but yes, so that it takes quite a lot to unrepress yourself, it turns out, which is part of what I learned in the tantra retreats, that we've inhaled and absorbed so many messages about sex, or you know, most of us had, and I especially had as an Irish Catholic schoolgirl, that you need to unlearn a lot of stuff in order to take lovers.
Yeah, and Stacey's asking about how we find tantra retreats.
Oh,
so
Stacey, where are you based?
Stacey's in Norwich near me, actually.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so Jan, I'm going to write in. Jan Day is the teacher I went to, and she's just amazing. So she would be my first choice, and she's kind of considered one of the best tantra teachers in Europe, and she must be in her 60s now, an ex-Cambridge PhD scientist, and so she's this very, very intelligent, level, gorgeous woman, because it's such a scary environment to go into. Or it was for me, maybe not for everyone. And she's so grounded and kind, and I think she's a big reason that I kept going back to do more, is because I admired her so much. And through that tantra world, it's basically like school for relationships, and sexuality is part of that, but it's actually quite a small part of it. A lot of it is spent practicing communication and practicing learning to know yourself, when to say yes and no, because first of all, we find it very hard to know sometimes whether we want to do something or don't. We're so locked into, but what does that person want, and what should I want? So a lot of the workshops are really practicing these fundamental things of like, but do I want to do that? And then if I don't want to do that, how do I feel about saying no? And most of us find that really difficult. So a lot of the workshops are just this absolutely amazing groundwork of how to communicate with each other. And I've made some of the most gorgeous friends through it. So people who are single, people who are married, people who are in open relationships, there's all sorts of people go. But because you're going through such deep things together, there's a gorgeous bonding that happens. And it's 5 years now since I started doing those workshops, and I'm still in the lives of all those people. So I really, really recommend it if you want to make new friends and get to know yourself well and get to know a bit better how to communicate with people. It's really been it's opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm.
So I suppose then if the goal, and we won't talk about the goal as being like self-love then, but I suppose part of writing a book like this and researching a book like this is learning about yourself, learning about relationships, all of the stuff. So I'd love to know, what did this book teach you about romantic love then and sex? Because I think there's different areas. There's romantic love, there's platonic love is covered in it, like with friends, and there's families, and then also, and we talked kind of a lot, I think we talked a bit about what you found out about yourself, but yeah, I'd love to know what you learned about the idea of romantic love in relation to you and just generally.
So the book helped me see two things about romantic love. In some ways, it's an absolute bullshit con that we have been sold through movies and the diamond industry and magazines telling us how to get our guy. And it is just an absolute fairy tale, literally, that has been pumped into us from such a young age. That means that when we are in relationships, we are then really shocked to realize, oh my God, it's not like all these things I thought it was going to be like. And then on the other hand, I learned that true love and partnership is a beautiful thing. And that isn't the stuff of, rom-coms and Sandra Bullock movies. That is nitty gritty, showing up and having difficult conversations. And so through this book, I could see the value of like proper partnership. I still am not very drawn to it, but I could see the value of it and what you can be for another human and what they can be for you. And I think it's very, very different to what romance has sold us. That is an industry, as far as I can tell. It's an industry that wants us to book dinners and look a certain way and think that our happy ending lies with someone else. And there's, all the dating app culture that is driving people insane at the moment. It's all fueled by this myth. And love is the reason we're here, but that love does not have to take the form of some hot woman, or it just doesn't need to. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us are blessed to have so many people in our lives right now that we can love and that love us. Why do we need to go looking for this fantasy other? So Alain de Botton, Emma, exactly. Alain de Botton talks about this loads and he does it so well. There are so many people in your life right now you can love, including even just people on the street. Smile at them, talk to someone in the coffee shop. These are real moments of love and connection. And then I realized the line in the book is that friendship had given me what romantic love always promised and never delivered. My friends, and we are not perfect and we have our fallouts, but we have really been through a lot together. And I realized I hadn't properly valued any of it because it wasn't something that was sanctioned with a wedding day. I did value them, but I also didn't really see, but that is that's relationship, that's love. And the same with my siblings, like my sisters, we drive each other mad and we do anything for each other. That's love. My mom, that's love, even though she pisses me off and never tells me anything I want to hear. But we've put this one thing idea at the top of the heap. And Bella De Paolo talks about this, that our idea of intimacy now is the narrowest construal, I think is the word she uses, of intimacy that has ever existed. So it used to be that historically, and Alain de Botton talks about this too, we were part of a tribe of about 40 people. You were all living entwined with each other. You also had a relationship with God. You had a relationship with nature. You had a relationship with the stars and the sky. Now we've got we're meant to just have a relationship with this one person we haven't yet met, and is meant to offer us everything. And of course, it's just not reality. So through this, I learned that my feelings about romance were, I'd never quite thought about it enough, but I also didn't ever buy it. Like, and I could, with friends, and they were obsessed with finding someone, I couldn't understand it. I actually couldn't, because to me, they were so amazing. And why did they have to go shopping for this extra person that was suddenly going to make everything okay? But I could see that with them now, they wanted that security of having that one special person and building a life with them. And I do see the value in that now, but it's also not how all of us are made. And I've realized I'm not made like that at all. So the book explores me building this life of friendship and lovers, so that I can have that closeness and I can have sex, and it doesn't come in the form of a together forever by a house partnership.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you do talk about early on in the book about the idea of loneliness. It might be touched on more later on, but that's what's coming to mind to me now, the idea of like, you can be in a partnership and be so lonely, whereas quite often when we're single, we can be less lonely because we're making more of an effort with our friends, with our family, with all these other relationships you just talked about, because we kind of have to.
And yeah, so Bella DePaulo talks about that. She said that people in couples have the one, and people who are single have the ones. And research has shown that we tend to be better connected to our extended family and our community and our friends. But that said, being single can also be so lonely as well. So, like, living alone in lockdown, writing this book, I was deranged with loneliness because I just missed hugs so much. And so I also think, I don't want to ever pretend that being single is just this joyous, fabulous thing all the time. It's not, because no walk of life is. Everything has its joys and its challenges, and it can be lonely being single, and especially in a pandemic. I just wanted anyone on the sofa next to me. I would have grabbed the nearest person, honestly. And again, that was a moment where I realized, that is why people are in relationships. But then as soon as life opened up again, then I forgot that idea.
And what do you like, do you have advice then for people pondering that question? It's like whether they are single or whether they wish they were single. Some people that. Do you have any advice for, like, how can they start exploring this, or accepting it, making peace with it?
So I think if you really want to meet someone, Emma just messaged about our writing. I'll talk about that after, Emma. But if you really want to meet someone, that is your truth. And that's really, like, I don't think you need to pretend that's not what you want. So one of my friend's characters in the book, she was like, she worried that it was unfeminist to really want to get married and have children. And it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. That was what she really wanted. And for me, I realized it absolutely wasn't what I really wanted, but I thought I should want it. And so I think with all of these things, it's very hard sometimes to even know what we actually want compared to what the world tells us we should want. And we're so influenced by what's going on immediately around us. So if all your friends are in partnership, it is going to feel probably quite lonely to be the only single person. And I'm really lucky in where I live in London. So we must be on some sort of ley line, because everyone on my street is single, and all ages, shapes and sizes. And we just have created this alternative family setup. And I couldn't have planned it. I just got so lucky. And if I was still living in the town where I grew up, I wouldn't feel like that at all. It would be I would feel very like the odd one out. And so I think that's hard. But I also think it is really possible to, like, the thing is with singledom, there's such a stigma around it. It takes quite a lot of guts to say, I think I'm single and I think I'm quite happy. People will doubt you for it. But I think, I just think you have to get to know yourself well enough to go, do I really want to meet someone? If so, okay, great. What are the ways I could do that? If I'm not quite sure, what is it that I'm missing in life? You know, can these gaps be filled by other people, which is something Alan de Botton writes about. You know, if you really, so in my case, want someone to sit on the sofa with, then it turned out in lockdown, I befriended my neighbours downstairs after spending a year ignoring them because, you know, I was busy and had a life. And then in lockdown, none of us had a life. And then I was sitting on their sofa. So again, it didn't have to be this partner, so can needs get met by other people, and through tantra I just experience this beautiful sex life in forms that are not the ones that are traditionally offered us in society. So I suppose the advice would be to just try and take time a bit to understand what you really want, and there is no shame in anything you want. So I always felt embarrassed that I didn't want to be with someone. I thought there was something wrong. Other people feel embarrassed that they really do want to be with someone. They think there's something wrong. There isn't with any of it. Get to know a little bit yourselves, and then if you're in a bad place which isn't making you feel so good, try and find new connections and new groups and new people to be with. That was something my therapist said, because most of my friends were getting married and having children, and I was one of the odd ones out at the start of the book, and that really changes by the end. But she said, I think you need to make new friends. And I was quite defensive, and I was like, I like my friends. And she said, I'm not saying ditch your old friends, but you need to meet people that are living different kinds of lives. Because at that point, all my weekends were at children's birthday parties, and that didn't make me feel good. It made me feel terrible. And so then going to tantra workshops, going to these weird festivals, it just opened me up to different kinds of people living different kinds of lives. And it's been such a blessing. So there is all sorts of people out there, but you might have to make a bit of an effort to find them.
Yeah, brilliant advice. I think you've got 3 new neighbours. Maybe we need the Marianne Power commune, I think.
Well, that might be book number 5.
I think so. Yeah, we basically, you've definitely got enough.
We are sort of living in a very expensive, because it's fucking London, with commune. But I couldn't have planned it. I've just got so lucky this way, and it's been gorgeous because everyone in my building is single. We have keys to each other's flats. We go in and out for breakfast and all that sort of stuff. So I feel like I've got a lot of the good bits of family life, without the fact, without the other things that I never really was drawn to. But I don't know how you go off and find that, because if I'd have looked for it, I don't think I could have found it. It was just an absolute blessing.
But it is being open to it as well, I think, Marianne.
That's true. Like that's true.
Like
that's
COVID
true.
happened and forced you to talk to.
No, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Because Nelly downstairs kept offering me to go down for tea and coffee, and I was like, oh, I don't know why I was. I think I was a bit suspicious of getting to know your neighbours.
Yeah, London life.
I thought if they were irritating, and you couldn't escape them, so you just sort of keep them at a distance. Then lockdown happened, and I was the irritating one, and they were all amazing.
Also, this commune has a fish and chip shop across the road, so we love that.
Exactly.
We've got 10 minutes left, everybody.
Lovely.
Do you want to talk quickly about your writing workshops then, and a little bit?
Emma. So that was also, in lockdown, I was living alone, and honestly so lonely. I thought I would go insane. Put a thing out on Instagram saying, does anyone want to just write together? And loads of us showed up, and that ended up being most Saturdays of lockdown. So Emma was there, and I can't see all your names, but they were just an absolute joy, weren't they, Emma? Because they were just like people from around the world, and we'd sit there in our different time zones and our different states of mental health. Shelley's there too, and just scribble together and have chats. And it was honest. Actually, I think it's one of the nicest things that's ever happened to me. That workshop. It was lovely.
That's an example of, like you say, making a little bit of effort to find what you need. So
that's true.
The advice is brilliant. It's like, work out what you need. Where are you lacking?
And there's no shame in whatever you need. Don't make yourself wrong for what you need. And we will all need different things potentially. So just be honest, with yourself about what you need.
Yeah, and I think this book is what it shares so well is what you might need sometimes is some great sex, and sometimes it might be a sofa buddy. Sometimes it might be a babysitter. It's all and
they could all come from different people. Whereas we've been brought up in a way where we think that one person has to provide all those things.
Yeah. Guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I've got a question from Shelley actually earlier on.
Shelley.
This is a book actually. This is a question from quite early on when you were talking about you were reading books about how to write a book.
Yes.
Which was the one that helped you the most? Or would you go back to?
Look at them up now. The two that I've got loads up on that shelf. The two that come to mind are the Shelley that I used to talk about a lot in the workshop, Writing Down the Bones. by Natalie Goldberg, and she's a Buddhist, and she talks about writing as a meditation practice. And she's also just a warm, funny person. Like, she just is someone you'd want to hang out with. And she made writing very accessible, because she didn't have this kind of fancy style. It's just like a person talking to you. And so that was good. And then I also like Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. And Anne Lamott is very funny as well. And she also, Bird by Bird, talks about when her brother, when they were little, had left a project to the last day of the school holiday, and suddenly he had to do this big project. It was on birds for the next day, and he was crying. He was like, I don't know how to do it. And his dad said, bird by bird, buddy, bird by bird. So you just do one bird at a time. And a book is like that. You do one paragraph at a time, one page at a time. You just bird by bird by bird. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. One more question for you. Stacey, I think you want to know about socials. David's sharing those now.
Thank you.
A question on unrequited feelings for someone and how to best to accept that or deal with that. That's a great question.
It's a really good question, and I'm no expert on anything. So, but I used to have quite a lot of unrequited things. And I spent most of my 20s kind of fantasizing about someone who didn't like me. And I now know him very well, and I'm so glad that he didn't like me in that way. And I realized, for me personally, I would get into those unrequited situations because they were safe, because they were never going to end up in anything. So for me, that was why I was doing it. So it might be that, again, there's maybe some journaling or questions about, like, why do I like this person? Why am I so drawn to someone who doesn't like me back? There just might be a bit of questions that you could ask yourself around that. And it might be that they are just the best thing ever, and I hope they change their mind and fall madly in love with you. But it might be something else is there too. Or is it sometimes also that, yeah, there's a fear of love, or a feeling that we don't deserve love. And so, again, Alain de Botton talks about this too, fear of rejection. Yeah, so there can be a lot of fear there. And so sometimes we can attach ideas to someone who isn't really ever going to become real because we're scared. So I guess probably there could be a lot of things you could think about and write about and talk to a friend about there that might be driving the situation.
Yeah, definitely relate to that idea of that, like the crush that's never gonna, it won't ever, you just know that nothing's gonna happen, so therefore it's almost safe, isn't it?
Yeah, and then is that because you're scared of a relationship, or you don't think you deserve it? There's lots, and there's lots you can think about there.
And again, it's back to the idea of what do you need and what are you looking for. If you aren't able to get it from, well, we cannot get everything from one person anyway, that's too much to put on this imaginary person, but where else can you get these things from in your life? Brilliant. I feel like we should go out on a high, everybody, and we should all brag about something in the chat.
Yay!
If anybody who's able to share a little message, yeah. And the idea about this is, Marianne, like you say, it's like being able to kind of own something that we're proud of and
exactly
switch the energy, isn't it?
Yeah. So you can literally start the sentence. Are we going to write it in the chat box?
Yes.
I brag, and try and use that word. I know it's uncomfortable, but try to just to try it on for size. So I'm going
to. So could you say? Well, you're going to write one in the chat, are you?
I was going to. Yeah. So I brag that I have actually built quite an unusual life full of love, which is exactly what I wanted. At the beginning, I wanted to find out what a life with love would look like if you didn't get married and have kids. And I have actually really built that life. So I brag about that. It's really cool.
That's definitely worth bragging. I mean, you could also brag about this, but you've got a lot of brags.
Yay, David. Yeah, can I see the chat box?
I love it. It is funny, isn't it? It's definitely
I'm
different
proud of,
And it's definitely a practice though, isn't it, as well?
Oh, and I brag that I've taught lots of students over the years. Yes, 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 that others would have given up on. Oh, Emma was always such a joy.
She is.
Oh, Jackie's loving herself more every day.
I mean, quite a cool group, really.
Really?
Aren't we, everybody?
Totally. I'm still learning in my field. Yeah.
Lovely.
It's such a nice thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. And I think, and it is a bit, sometimes it's a bit weird to do things like this with your friends, isn't it? Because, but I really love it, because I think when we don't see each other, none of us see each other enough, do we? So when you do see them, but with me and my friends, it's usually too much white wine, too much talking really fast. And then at the end of the night, I always feel a bit like, I don't really know how anyone is or what's going on. So I feel like sometimes, although it's a bit cringy to say, right, we're going to do something a bit different today, actually you get so much from it. So
you would. Yeah, because it's a real snapshot of what someone's headspace is or what's happening in their life.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. I love reading everyone else's. I'm still studying and about to pass my counselling skills course. Oh my God, you're learning British Sign Language. Brilliant.
So much learning, isn't there? Learning.
Yeah.
Using our brains.
At 66 years old, Jackie, cool.
Amazing. Well, I brag that I brought everyone together tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock almost.
Oh,
it's been so nice to hang out with you.
Lovely hanging out. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your brags. I hope it felt nice to share that, and make sure you do it with your friends next time you see them.
Yeah.
And thank you. Congratulations on the book.
Pleasure.
Get a load of this. And yeah, you can keep in touch with Marianne on the socials that David has shared.
Thanks, David. Head of IT.
Head of IT. Thank you, Marianne.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Bye.